is guided by the fact that we have been working very closely, though informally, with the National Treasury, even prior to my appointment or election as the chairman of budget. And therefore, most of the things I'll be highlighting, we have many times informally discussed with even the CS for Treasury, Professor Jogona, even prior to the time he was appointed as our CS. As we make the budget of 2023-2024, we are making it at a very dire background. And I'm saying this because most of us participants here are private to some of the issues I'm highlighting, because they'll be forming a basis of our thinking framework going forward. Because as we talk now, for the last 1-2 years, the global economy has been battered. Most of the parameters are in red and south. Even parameter like interest rates globally, even measuring with the biggest economy in the world, they have had to raise interest rates, base lending rate, the Fed lending rate by 75 basis points for 4 consecutive times. They have raised the interest rate 6 times this year alone. Of course, we have inflation here in Kenya, but it's also a global menace across many economies. We have seen others escalating to very high heights, like we saw in countries like Sri Lanka and the others. And therefore, the global economy as it stands now is not in a very good position. And of course, this has been entrenched by the effects of the pandemic in regards to the value chains and other related issues. Coming back home, as we make the budget of year 2023-2024, we all live in Kenya. I suppose there is no one who came this morning from another planet. And we know the situation in our country currently. Inflation, as we saw in the month of October, at around 9.6%. I don't need even to buttress the issue of the high cost of living, exemplified by the high prices of basic commodities. Currently, we have a very dire situation in regards to the drought in our country, where 10% of Kenyans are in acute need of food. And therefore, as we deliberate and as we move forward, it is important for us to know the situation at which we are in. And some of the short-term solutions we'll be seeking between short and medium term in regards to what I have highlighted, because we must start with a country that is feeding itself. That is more than immediate. I suppose we'll be looking at incentivizing the sectors that will help us feed our population. And I mean agriculture, we are already doing it in terms of incentivizing our inputs in agriculture, specifically fertilizer, certified seed, pesticides, and other inputs, because this will be a component of what we have come here to do this morning going forward. And Professor, I'm sure we have had this discussion for many times. When we talk about high prices of basic commodities, whether it is a monetary or a physical issue or a problem. And I am very persuaded that the high cost of living that we have in our country, we may attempt to solve them using monetary tools, but I don't think the problem, the basis of the problem, is monetary in nature. I think it's physical. And the more the reason we'll be addressing this matter from the basis of it, that is agriculture, because globally speaking, whatever monetary tool, even of mopping out money from the economy, that we try to inject to curtail inflation, I think that has to go in tandem with more weight put into physical side, because I think the disruption of the supply chain is the basis of the problem that we have currently across the world, not just in Kenya. And of course that has been, we have put fuel into fire through the disruptions that are there in even Europe, countries that account for a lot in terms of food supplies of the world. And this reminds us that even as we make the budget, we have to think about our internal supply chains in regards to food, because I don't think we can continue over-relying on imports in regards to feeding our population. Of course, even in regards to the physical side of agriculture also, because that is the immediate problem that we have, we'll be looking at moving away from rain-fed agriculture to irrigation and mechanization so that we can rely more on our brain more than nature. And even as we think about broadly making the budget of our country, because I'm just highlighting the broad framework that I want to persuade all of us that we move forward and trends in it. We must recalibrate the way we make our budget. In my thinking, I've had time to peruse where we are as a country and possibly the interventions we may need to have. We may need to recalibrate our budget making process, in my opinion, so that we also give weight to the investment side of our economy. Many times we only spend money and appropriate money on areas that are only good for expenditure. But I think it augurs well for all of us, and especially our economy, that we put in enough resources in sectors that are investments in nature. We have a sleeping giant in Kenya in mining. I am sure mining can, if we give it enough resources, can be able to take a great proportion in filling our national basket in regards to money. Agriculture, I've talked about it. Tourism, any sector that when you put $1, you invest in terms of the country and the economy, I am sure we'll be looking at those sectors so that we spur those areas that are investment in nature. I don't need to say too much about industrialization. It is almost a banality, because in every sector, like in every forum like this, we talk about industrialization. But I'm sure we'll do it through action. That our country, the best multiplier that we have in our economy is industry. And we must invest in it deliberately so that we can multiply the resources that we have and be able to put our economy in the right pedestal. And as I talk about this, there is a country I always like referring to, because there is nothing new in this world. We learn from each other, peer to peer. Others are higher than us. We must learn from them. As we talk about industry, our focus is in the hustler nation at empowering the people at the lower level, and especially those who can be made the agents of our economy, active agents rather than passive, but putting deliberate effort in growing those at a lower cadre. I believe that catalyzes everyone, the middle and even the up. Because when every Kenyan is made to be active, economic-wise, they provide the market for those at the middle and those at the higher level. And I'm sure we'll be borrowing a lot, even from South Korea, where we can have the lower levels becoming suppliers of the middle, graduating upwards. The chaebols in South Korea is a good example, where we have a few organized companies that also do so well within the economy. But the basis of this was not just sporadic, it was deliberate. The government put in policy in it in the 1960s, coming up to 1979, and I believe we are at a situation where we can also direct policy to be able to spur the economy, and especially specifically going to the micro in terms of the company that you are dealing with. If you study our friends from China, a few years ago they came up with Made in China 2025, and I think they have been able to achieve the bulk of it. I'm just trying to buttress that as we sit here, we have the men and ladies who can put their brain into works so that even as we make the budget, we direct the resources to where they are needed in the growth of our economy. Other countries have done it. I am sure we'll also do it. The issue of the national debt, you must have heard we have come up with a decision that we must cut on the appetite of borrowing, and especially local that crowds out our business people. We'll be tabling our supplementary budget soon, and you know for sure, I'm sure most of you have been consulted. We'll be trying to save around 300 billion Kenya shillings, most of which would have borrowed locally. Because I've heard there before, majority of the people defending the issue of borrowing and talking about other countries borrow. Yes, they borrow. Even the biggest economy in the world have borrowed more than us. We like citing Japan when we want to increase our appetite for borrowing. But even as we talk about that, because it is a component, we must look at the issues around borrowing, majorly around cost. We cannot compare the cost of our borrowing and the cost of the other countries' borrowing, and especially the ones that we cite. Many times we forget to talk and express our mind in regards to the fact that most of these countries we cite to have borrowed so much also led to others. The country that is highest indebted at around to 50% debt to GDP ratio is also the highest led to the US, for example. I don't think we have that luxury as a country. I don't think we led to many, and therefore we have to look at it critically. I don't want to talk much because CS will be going for his first cabinet meeting, but I want to say that the broad vision that we have as the leadership, of course, is growth and equity. And when you talk about growth, from where I sit, it is more the component of income more than wealth. And therefore, our prerogative is to put money, yes, in wealth creation, but more importantly, in areas that will bring forth incomes to the people, because the aggregated income of the micro is what we report as the macro income. Going forward, and we have discussed this matter, and I want to bring it forth before this gathering, we are going to change a little bit on how we make budgets. We are going to change a few things. We have been a bit lazy, in my opinion, where we only do incremental budgeting. We look at last year's budget, then we increase we put in a percentage. We must burn midnight oil and go to zero-based budget so that every entity, every department must account for every shilling they have, especially beyond the salaries, so that we put in some discipline so that we free up our physical space to be able to cater for the issues that I've highlighted there before. And I am inviting all of us, those who will be tasked. My committee is very ready. The National Assembly and Parliament, we are ready, that we interrogate every department and every expenditure line from zero, so that we can build a budget from scratch, so that we can have a basis, a truthful basis, on which, even if we are to invoke incremental, then we have the right basis on the start. Lastly, the elephant in the room in our economy, I believe, one of the big issues is SOEs. I am happy the policy of this government is that government will not be in the business of doing business that can be done by private sector, other than strategic areas. And these things I'm talking about are basics. I'm sure we all think about them. And forgive me for being blatant. We are in Kenya, we have to look for solutions around. I keep wondering, my grandmother, who has never boarded a plane, possibly has never been inside any plane, has never flown to any destination, is made to pay taxes every year to support people who fly via KQ. When we talk about SOEs, we have to dig very deep. because we cannot have SOEs that hemorrhage money. We must have SOEs that bring money to the basket, interrogate the ones that are critical, and offer critical services to the Kenyan people. But I think it is the right time to shift from hemorrhaging money. We structure our SOEs. We curtail their borrowing because most of it is GOK guaranteed and actually dollar denominated, which if there is a disruption in Forex, we end up losing too much. We must interrogate that matter because it is an issue that also